Hi everyone, so today we're going to look at an example for factoring. So when we look at this trinomial, we know the first thing that needs to happen is the GCF of x needs to be pulled out. When we do that, we're left with x squared plus 10x plus 24 left inside the trinomial. We know this GCF needs to just keep getting pulled down along, so x is written out in front, and then we look at this and we say, what are the factors of 24 that add to be 10? And we should gather that that is 6 times 4 equals 10 when we add them. So since the a term is 1 in this case, we know we could jump straight into opening your parentheses and saying x plus 6, x plus 4 equals 0. And then we know that we need to set each of these things equal to 0. One of the biggest common mistakes is this x out in front. We forget to pull him down and set him equal to 0, giving us our 3 answers that we know we're going to get, because we know that in the beginning we can have 3 zeros with the cubic function. So one of the answers is x equals 0, and then the other two come straight down. X plus 6 equals 0, and then when we simplify this, we get x equals negative 6. And same concept, but we get x equals negative 4. Okay, so after that first example, we're going to look at an example very similar to that one. But when we look at this, we first have to realize that we need to set this equal to 0. So we're going to move the 6 to the other side, giving us x to the 4th minus 5x squared minus 6 equals 0. So now, just like in the quadratic before, we would say that the a term's 1, so we know we can open up our 2 sets of parentheses immediately. In this case, we have an x to the 4th. So before, when we had an x squared as the a term, when we opened up our sets of parentheses, we would put x's in here, because that was just the factors of x squared that multiply to become x squared later. In this case, since it's x to the 4th, the factors of that would be x squared and x squared. That's where we're getting these front terms from. Then we find the factors of negative 6 that add to be negative 5, which we know is negative 6 times plus 1, still equaling to 0. So now when we take these things and we set them equal to 0, we have x squared minus 6 equals 0. And when we solve, x squared equals 6. And then to undo these the square roots, the squares, we have to square root them. So we get x equals radical 6. And a big common mistake that we do often is we forget to put the plus or minus sign out in front. Same concept when we go over here to do our x squared plus 1 equaling 0. Now when we subtract the negative 1, we now have to take the radical of a negative number. And hopefully we remember when we did this a couple chapters ago, we know that if we have a negative out in front, we need to pull out that imaginary piece in addition to our plus or minus, and then radical 1 just simplifies to 1. So there's our 4 answers, and we know we're going to get 4 back from the beginning, that we can possibly have 4 because it's an x to the 4th. Okay, so here we're on our last example for today, and when we look at this, we see that we have a 4-term polynomial. So what we're going to do is, when we know we have 4 terms, we're going to group. So when I group these first 2 together, I know I can pull out an x to the 3, leaving me x plus 2 in the inside. Then the second set of terms, I'm going to pull out a negative 4x, leaving me x minus plus 2 in the inside, equaling 0. Go ahead and write the things on the outside together. So I get x to the 3 minus 4x, all equaling x plus 2, equaling 0. And then when I go ahead and set each of these pieces equal to 0, or you guys can notice that you guys can pull out an x in one of these still. And remember, we used to check this at the very end, because if we missed in the beginning, that we could have pulled out an x from the very beginning, because every single term has an x included in it. Then if we miss that, we can go ahead and pull that x out now. So we're going to get an x coming out, leaving us x squared minus 4x, 4 inside, my apologies, x plus 2, equaling 0. So here's one answer. We'll get x equals 0. this set of parentheses, this binomial, we're going to get x squared equals 4. So when we square root it, we get x equals plus or minus 2. And then this last set of parentheses, we get x equals negative 2. If you notice, we end up having two answers. Negative 2 right here repeats itself. So we just previously learned that we can go ahead and write x equals negative 2 with a mult of 2 because there's two answers. Then we also have x equals positive 2 and x equals 0, and we're just writing them nice and pretty. And there's your final answer.